Alright, so now we come to basically the first epilogue of the Silmarillion, called the Akallabeth, or Downfall of Numenor. And Tolkien's idea for this came there from, in part from the myth about the land of Atlantis that sunk below the ocean. And so this is what this is about: a little island nation that is swallowed up by the sea. And also, in part, this comes from a dream that he had, and his son Michael also had this similar dream that he found out later. Basically, the big wave covering all the lands, just coming up and covering all the lands and drowning it. And we will see this come up again later in The Lord of the Rings. But as the story goes here, the Adain, the three houses of the fathers of men, are given a land. And this land is shaped like a 5-pointed star. And I'm going to show you a map of that land here. This is in the illustrated edition that I got, so it's all colorful and everything. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's what it looks like. They are rewarded for their aid that they gave to the elves in their wars. Of course, the elves of Beleriand ended up, a lot of them coming to, especially the Noldor, more specifically, were allowed back into the west, and they were given the island of Tol Eressëa, the Lonely Isle, which Tolkien also had written a poem about early on, when this was originally supposed to be what would become the island that England, Scotland, and Wales is on. Read about that in the Book of Lost Tales. And so they have a haven there called Avalone, which sounds very much like Avalon from The Legends of King Arthur, which did influence Tolkien. We see the number 7 pop up again. I don't remember the passage where it's at, but also we hear about the 7 seeing stones. And of course you have the 7 stars, all that. So that appears again. Now the men of Numenor are forbidden to sail to Valinor. They are not allowed to go there. And they accept this at first. But as time passes, they slowly begin to murmur against it. And a division happens between people that follow the king, the king's men, and then you have the faithful, those who stay true. Now, the first king of Numenor was Elros, the brother of Elrond, who chose to be mortal and was given a large lifespan. He lived to be 500 years old, but he did die. So they were given this longer lifespan, but they still have to die because that is the fate that Eru-Ilúvatar, or the gift that he gave them, which they begin to fear. And that is a big theme here and in The Lord of the Rings, is death and the fear of it. And man often is afraid of death and will try to seek to prolong it, or which they do here, but they also seek to resurrect the dead, which can't happen. We know from a biblical perspective that the only reason you can rise from the dead is through Christ. But that's something entirely different, of course. And we even see it in the Bible too, in the story of the Tower of Babel. Man fears the flood happening again, and they want to create their own little salvation here. And the men of Numenor try to do the same. At first, they, since they can't sail to Valinor, they do sail to Middle-earth, and they establish some strongholds there. And at first, they teach the men of Middle-earth and all kinds of different things, and they're very good to them. But as wickedness begins to increase because of this fear of death that they have, they eventually try to become rulers over the men of Middle-earth, and even begin to treat them badly and enslave them. And of course, there's many men in Middle-earth at this time that are worshiping Sauron, the servant of Morgoth, who now rises up and tries to become a power of his own. And he fears Numenor and wants to destroy it. And eventually, the men of Numenor, they take their names in the Elven tongue, but eventually they start only going by, especially the Kingsmen, going by Numenorian names, or, the language Adunaic, the language of men. And eventually, you have a king comes along, Tar Palantir, who tries to reverse all the stuff that's going on here. But his, I believe it's his brother kind of works against him, and he's one of the Kingsmen, but Tar Palantir is not. He's one of the faithful. The faithful end up establishing their own little haven of Andunier, and they begin to get mistreated by the Kingsmen after Tar Palantir dies, and his nephew seizes the throne and then marries Tar Palantir's daughter, Miriel, who should have been the ruling queen, because that is now a law in Numenor. At first it wasn't, but it was later made one by the King Tar Aldarion, and you can read that story in Unfinished Tales. And so she should have been queen, but our Pharazôn seizes it and takes over the throne for himself, and he begins to persecute the Kingsmen. And eventually he goes to Middle-earth and fights, takes the Numenorian army there to fight Sauron's army. Sauron kind of humbles himself before our Pharazôn, and he ends up getting taken to Numenor as a prisoner, but eventually he becomes the king's chief counselor. And in the midst of the land, they have a mountain, and the king would lead the people up. At times, they had a few of these feasts that they would hold to give thanks to Eru, or God. There was no temple built here or anything like that. And of course, our Pharazôn forbids anyone to go up there anymore, and a temple is built to Morgoth, because Sauron deceives him and the Kingsmen into thinking that, Morgoth is actually God, and this Eru is not God. He's actually the devil. He's the bad guy. And Melkor, Lord of Darkness, he can give you all these new realms, not just here on Earth, but all these other planets out there that he can take you to, and you can get lands there and become more powerful. And of course, it's a big lie. And so the last Lord of Andunier, Amandil, he ends up making this plan where the faithful are going to take ship. They're going to gather all their people together and all the possessions and stuff like that, and they're going to sail to Middle Earth and just escape from here. But they have to do it in secret, because if our Pharazôn finds out, they will die. Many of them, and even the men in Middle Earth, because temples are built there too to Morgoth, are taken and sacrificed to Melkor. Now, is that something God would want someone to do? Is a human sacrifice another? I don't think so. That's evil. Because Melkor is the devil. Eru is actually the one true God, as we know from reading the Ainulindale. And lost my train of thought. And Pharazôn wants to go and wrest eternal life from the Valar. So he builds this armament under Sauron's direction, and he sails to go do it. He actually, as soon as he steps foot there, the Valar say, okay, we're done, we've had enough of this. They make an appeal to God, and he takes over at this point, and he does, the story of Atlantis. it is swallowed up by the sea. Now, Middle-earth at this time is flat. Eru takes it and bends the seas back and makes it a globe. And new lands and new islands and all kinds of stuff rise up in its place. Elendil, who is told by his father to go take over the faithful and sail to Middle-earth with his sons Isildur and Anarion and all that they have, he's going to go to Valinor to appeal to the Valar. He must have, because Elendil and his people are allowed to return to go to Middle-earth. They escape. But everyone else that stays behind dies. Even Tarmiriel, she dies. And so there you go. We can't go. Valinor's taken into the realm of hidden things. It's gone. We can't get there. Only the elves can get there because there's a road that still connects, the physical world into that other dimension where they can go. They can find a way there. And some people do, as we will learn when we get to Lord of the Rings. There's going to be a few hobbits and a dwarf who end up taking ship and going there. Of course, Pharazôn and all his men are killed, and at the end, we're told of all these different names that Numenor ends up getting after the fall. The title of this story, Akallabeth, is one of them. Another one that I want to point out is Atalante. Since this is Tolkien's own story of Atlantis, Atlantic, it's all tied together there, So basically, it would be from the elves that we get the name Atlantis and Atlantic. It comes from Atalante, which is Elvish for the Downfallen. Akallabeth. And that's the end of that section. Of course, Sauron, his physical form is destroyed in all this, so he can only return as an evil shadow spirit thing, whatever. And of course you have the Eye of Sauron, which in the movies, in the books, what's in the books is not what you see in the Peter Jackson movies, the big eye over the tower. It's not that in Tolkien's writings, but whatever. And there you have it. And so we got one more section to go here, which will basically cover what happens in Middle-earth at this time and beyond. And we're getting a little preview of what we're going to see in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And so try to do that tomorrow. We'll see. That'll be the last video in this Silmarillion series, and then on to The Hobbit. And plus I got some movies I want to do and that I want to talk about. And there we go. More content's coming. So until then, I'll talk to you all later. And I hope you enjoy this video. And I'll see you in the next one.